Hi guys, Mimi G here. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be doing a sew along to one of my new summer patterns, Simplicity Pattern 9150. Let's get started. If you're new to sewing, I have an online sewing and design school called Sew It Academy with a free trial that you can check out right now. If you already sew but maybe need a refresher course, you can follow along with the Sewing Basics video linked in the description box below. Watch that video and then come sew along with me. All right guys, we're going to go ahead and start on 9150. Which is this sort of athletic jumpsuit. And I'm not going to be sewing the skirt because it's very basic. It's just side seams and attaching the band. So we're just going to be working on view A, which is the jumpsuit. Okay, so on the back of the envelope, you have your list of suggested fabrics for this project. You're also going to see that you have a list of notions, so anything you're going to need for this pattern. For this jumpsuit, you're really just going to need some elastic. Now it says a 1/4 inch wide elastic and you are perfectly fine to use 1/4 inch wide elastic. I prefer to use this clear elastic that you find in swimwear, and this is actually 3/8 of an inch, so it gives me a bit wide, like just a tiny bit wider seam allowance. But I just like how much lighter it is and how stretchy it is. So I'm going to be using this, but feel free again to use whatever elastic you have on hand. Now let's go over all the pattern pieces that you're going to need to cut. Okay, you're going to need to cut out pattern piece number 8. This is our sleeve flounce, and you're going to cut 2. You're going to cut out pattern piece number 10, which is the left tie, and you're going to cut 1. You're going to cut out pattern piece number 11, which is the right tie, and you're also going to cut out 1. You're going to cut out pattern piece number 1, which is the bodice front, and you're cutting out 2. You're going to cut out pattern piece number 3, which is the pants front, and you're cutting out 2. You're going to cut out pattern piece number 5, which is the back, and you're going to cut out 2. The rest of the pattern pieces are all elastic. So for example, pattern piece number 2 is the elastic guide for the lower part of our bodice. Pattern piece number 9 is the armhole elastic. Pattern piece number 4 is the pants waist elastic. Pattern piece number 7 is the front neck elastic. And pattern piece number 6 is the back neck elastic. So this is a lot of elastic. So let me just say something really quickly. Unless you plan to be very athletic and moving a lot in this jumpsuit, then I would suggest yes, using all of the elastic. However, if you just plan to wear this for, like, let's say yoga or Pilates, all this elastic may not be necessary depending on how stretchy your fabric is. My fabric is very stretchy, so I may not need, for example, the elastic along the back because I know that it's going to lay flat. But depending on the fabric that you're using, you may need to use it. So I'm going to go ahead and cut all the pieces and use all the pieces for the sake of the tutorial. Now, once you have everything cut, we can start sewing. Okay, so for this tutorial, because we're using very stretchy fabric and this is going to stretch significantly over your body, you want to make sure that you're doing one of two things. You can either sew this entire thing using your serger. I don't do that on camera because not everybody has a serger, and so you need an option to be able to do this on your sewing machine. The second option is to use a zigzag stitch, a very narrow zigzag stitch, for all of your seam lines, including attaching our elastic, which you're going to see in a minute. If your machine has something called a lightning bolt stitch, it's a very, very narrow sort of diagonal zigzag stitch that is very stretchy. So not all machines have it, but if your machine does have it, then I would suggest using that. Okay, now that we've covered that, you want to make sure that you're also using a jersey or a ballpoint stretch needle. Now we're going to start with the front piece, and we're going to start with an elastic for the front. This is elastic guide number 7, which is for the front of our bodice. I'm going to be placing it along the very, very edge of my fabric. Now, the reason I'm doing that is because I'm using a wider elastic than the 1/4 inch that's suggested on the pattern envelope. And so because of that, I just want to make sure I'm not taking up too much seam allowance. So I'm just going to be placing it along the very edge, stretching ever so slightly. You don't want to stretch too much. You just want to make sure that you go from the very top to where your dot is. So you're going to be stretching just a tiny bit as you attach this with a zigzag stitch. I'm going to show you how to do this, and you're going to apply the elastic everywhere else in the same way. Okay, so I'm using a very narrow zigzag stitch, and I'm just going to be sewing along the center as I attach my elastic to the bodice. Okay, so once you have your elastic attached, we're not going to finish this off just yet, so just leave it as it is. Take number 2 elastic guide, which is for the bottom of our bodice, and you're going to attach it the same way. After you've done this one, you're going to do your other front the same way, attaching at the front and at the bottom. All right, guys, once you have your elastic on both your front bodice pieces, we're going to go ahead and grab pattern piece 11, which is the right tie. You're going to fold it with right sides facing each other, and you're just going to pin. You're going to go to your sewing machine, and you're going to stitch this using 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. You're going to sew along one short end along the long end, and you're going to leave one end open so you can turn your tie right side out. Okay, you're going to go ahead and grab your right bodice piece. You're going to grab your right tie, and we're going to place it in between the dots. You're going to go ahead, take this to your machine, and you're going to stitch down your tie. Once you've done that, you're going to go ahead and finish the bottom portion of your hem. So you're going to turn up the 3/8 of an inch hem allowance, and you're going to zigzag in place. All right, guys, so I've already tacked down my tie. So now what we're going to do is we're going to finish off the hem allowance for the bottom. So you're going to make sure that you're turning in the hem allowance along the front, and then turn up the 3/8 of an inch along your hem. Now this is just for the bottom. We're still going to leave the front of our bodice unfinished until we attach our back at the shoulder. So I'm just going to pin this so it doesn't move. And again, you're just going to be using your zigzag stitch. Okay, so we went and attached number 11, which is the right tie, to the right bodice, and we finished the bottom hem of our bodice. Now you're going to do the same thing with the left side. So with the left side, we have a much longer tie. So this is pattern piece number 11. I've gone ahead and sewn it just like we did for the shorter one. You're going to pin it in place along the same place between your dots. You're going to stitch it down, and you're going to finish the bottom off the same way we did the right front. Okay, guys, we're going to move on to the inseam. So you're going to grab one back pattern piece. This is pattern piece number 5, and you're going to grab pattern piece number 3, which is the front pant leg, and you're going to go ahead and pin along the inseam. Make sure to match up your notches. You're going to be easing in between. You're going to notice you have a little bit more on your front pattern piece than you do your back, so you're just going to go ahead and ease that on. You're going to go ahead and stitch using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Make sure that you're using either your zigzag stitch, very narrow zigzag stitch, or your lightning bolt stitch, or if you have a serger, you can go ahead and serge this together because this is an area that's going to stretch quite a bit as you're trying to put your jumpsuit on. All right, guys, once you have sewn your inseams on both of your pieces, you're gonna go ahead and lay them right sides facing, and we're gonna go ahead and stitch together our center front along the crotch and then up to the center back. So first I like to pin at my inseam so that I can make sure those seam lines are matching up, and then match up your notches along the front and the back. Pin as much as you need to. Okay, now again, using a very narrow zigzag stitch or your lightning bolt stitch, you're gonna go ahead and using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, you're going to stitch along the center front, down the crotch, and then along the center back. All right, guys, so once we have sewn together the center backs and the crotch, we're gonna go ahead and attach elastic to the front of our pants and also to the neckline of the back. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab my elastic, and I'm just gonna open this so that I'm only working on the front of the pant. Now, working on the front of the pants with wrong sides facing up, you're gonna go ahead and sew on your elastic same way that we did for the bodice. So you're gonna do that for the front of the pant, okay? And then you're going to turn it along your 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, and you're going to finish off this front seam. Now for the back where you attach your elastic, so let me go ahead and grab that. Looking at the wrong side of the back, you're gonna go ahead and using your zigzag stitch, you're gonna attach your elastic the same way we've been doing, but you're not gonna finish the back, okay? So the way that you're going to turn and finish the front of your pant, you're not gonna turn and finish the back just yet. Okay, guys, once you've attached the elastic, I went ahead and like I said, I finished off the front end of the pant, right? But for the neckline, I've left it unfinished because we're gonna do it all as one seam once we attach our shoulders. So I've laid my front pieces right sides facing over my back, and you're just gonna go to your sewing machine and you're going to stitch your shoulders down, okay? So I've already pinned them together. Head over to your machine using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. You're just going to sew across your shoulder seams. Once you've done that, you're gonna go ahead and finish off your hem allowance for the front. So just like we did the bottom, you're going to fold over your hem allowance and you're going to zigzag through the front, along the back, and then down the other front. All right, guys, so we have gone ahead and sewn our shoulders. We have finished the front end of our hem along the front and then along the back. Now we're gonna go ahead and attach our flounce to our sleeve. So I've done one side here. What you're gonna do is you're going to match up all of your dots. So that's why it's always a good idea to mark your dots, mark your notches. So I'm gonna pin first at my notch with right sides facing. You should have a dot at the shoulder for your shoulder seam. Now you're gonna go ahead and you're going to stitch your flounce in place using 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. You're gonna pin and stitch down the other flounce the same way. Okay, so we have our flounce attached, and what you're gonna do now is you're going to add your elastic. So I'm gonna turn this so that the wrong side is facing me and my flounce is facing the inside of my my bodice, and we're going to attach our elastic along the seam allowance, which is 3/8 of an inch, the same way we have before. After you've done that, you're gonna go ahead and you're going to turn your seam allowance to the inside, and you're gonna finish it off just like we have the rest of our elastic. Okay, so now that we've done our flounce and we have finished off, the elastic is on the inside so you don't see it. We're gonna go ahead and attach the front bodice to the front of our pants. So on the front of your pant, you should have marked a little dot. That's where you're going to place the end of your bodice. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and pin. And we're going to stitch these together so that they're one piece. I'm gonna pin again, and I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side. Okay, now go to your machine and I want you to go ahead and stitch these together so that way we can go ahead and attach our side seams. All right, guys, once you've attached your bodice to the front of your pant, it's all one piece now with obviously the opening in the middle. Your wraps should be facing the front, right? So your wrap is here and then the other one in this direction. Just go ahead and tuck that so you keep your ties out of the way. With right sides facing, you're going to pin your entire side seam. So I've pinned both of my side seams all the way down. I've done the other side. You're gonna go ahead and stitch this down using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Then you're going to do the same thing to the other side. You're gonna turn it right side out, and I suggest trying it on. If you need to take in a little bit, you could do so along the side seams. Now, before you head over to your sewing machine to sew your side seams together, make a note that on your right side, you had 2 dots that leave an opening on the right side of your bodice because your tie goes through that opening. So I just want to remind you so that you don't accidentally stitch it all the way down. So stitch on the right side till you reach your dot, back stitch, break your thread, leave an opening, go back to your dot, and then you can continue all the way down. Now, once you finish your side seams and you have your opening on the right side, that's where the long tie goes in. So when you put it onto your body, you're going to go ahead and sift this side through and then around your back, and you're going to tie it on the side. Now that you've done that, the only thing left for you to do is to try it on, make any adjustments you need to the side seams, and finish off the hem of your pant legs, and you are all done. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this sew along. If you're not following me on Instagram already, please follow @MimiGStyle. Until next time, peace.